Part 1. Statics and Friction. Mr. Arthur Vance hated silence. Silence was his enemy. In the silence, the sound that tore from his throat, a sharp, barking K-Ka, rang out like a gunshot in a library. He stood by the window in Physics Lab 304. Third floor, south-facing windows. Dust motes danced in the shafts of autumn sunlight. Brownian motion. Chaos. Arthur loved physics because it could explain chaos. His own body, however, defied explanation. He was 42. 20 of those years had been spent warring with his own neurons, which fired false signals to his muscles. Tourette Syndrome. Not the cinematic kind where people shout obscenities. Coprolalia affected only 10% of sufferers, and Arthur was lucky enough to avoid it. He had his own repertoire. A violent jerk of the neck to the right as if dodging a slap, and that guttural sound. K-Ka. Sometimes, rapid blinking until his eyelids ached. The bell shattered the silence, and Arthur felt a wave of relief. Noise was camouflage. The sophomore class, period 4, spilled into the room. Loud, cruel, full of hormones and a disdain for anything that didn't fit on their smartphone screens. Arthur tensed his shoulders. His premonition, the sensory phenomenon preceding a tic, was building under his right shoulder blade, like a guitar string being tightened under his skin. Not now. Hold it. Good afternoon, he said, turning around. His neck jerked. Sharp. To the right. A few snickers from the back row. It was Jason and his entourage. They already had their phones out. Today we are discussing resonance, Arthur continued, ignoring the laughter. He picked up a piece of chalk. The collapse of bridges, wine glasses shattering from an opera singer's voice, and systems thrown out of equilibrium. He wrote a formula on the board. $F equals F_cos/omega t$. His hand betrayed him with a sudden spasm. The chalk snapped, emitting a fingernails on chalkboard screech. K-Ka. The sound escaped on its own. The class froze for a second, then erupted in laughter. Someone in the back loudly mocked him. K-Ka. Arthur closed his eyes. The law of conservation of energy. Emotions don't disappear. They just change form. Into pain. Enough, he said quietly. Open to page 42. In the front row sat Lily, a quiet girl with eyes perpetually cast downward. She was the only one who didn't laugh. She looked at him not with pity, but with a kind of adult exhaustion. Arthur knew her file. Her father was an alcoholic. Physics wasn't a science to her. It was an escape, just as it was for him. Arthur Vance's life was divided into two phases, like alternating current. Phase 1, school. Here he was Tick-Tock, the nickname the students used behind his back. He was the eccentric teacher who knew his subject brilliantly but whose authority was constantly undermined by involuntary grimaces. Phase 2, home. His apartment was a fortress. Soft furniture, rounded edges. He often fell or bruised himself during severe episodes. Here he could scream, twitch, bark, and twist his arms. Here he was free from staring eyes. But there was a third variable. Miss Claire. She had joined the faculty 6 months ago. An English literature teacher. Young, with eyes the color of a spring sky. She didn't look away when his neck spasmed. She waited for him to finish his sentences. One evening, they were the last two left in the faculty lounge. Arthur was grading quizzes, trying to steady a pen that danced in his fingers. Arthur, she called out. He flinched. K-Ka. I'm sorry, he whispered automatically. For what? She stepped closer. For being alive? She placed a hand on his shoulder, right where the string was pulled tightest. And a miracle occurred. The tick didn't happen. The warmth of her palm seemed to ground the electrical discharge in his nerves. You are a wonderful teacher, Arthur, she said softly. Lily, that girl in your 4th period. She told me you're the only one who explains the world in a way that makes her want to live in it. In that moment, Arthur believed the laws of physics could be broken, that gravity could vanish and he could float. He began to hope. That was his fatal error. Hope is the most unstable isotope. The catastrophe happened a month later. It was observation day. The district superintendent, the principal, a man with a face like stone who cared only about test scores, and several parents were seated at the back of the room. The topic was electricity. Arthur had prepared for a week. He took a stronger dose of his sedatives, even though they made his thoughts viscous, like honey. But he needed the calm. Everything was going perfectly. He was demonstrating with a Wimshurst machine. The sparks crackled, and the kids, even Jason the bully, watched, mesmerized. And then it happened. Jason, deciding the moment was too serious, turned the volume up on his phone. A loud, piercing sound filled the room. A recording of that same K-Ka Arthur had made last week, remixed over a trap beat. The class exploded with laughter. The superintendent exchanged a look with the principal. The stress hit Arthur instantaneously. The sedatives failed. His body betrayed him. The hand holding the glass rod jerked violently upward. The rod flew toward the front desks. Glass shattered against the edge of a table, and a shard, a small, sharp piece of physics, scratched a student's cheek. It was Jason. The silence became dead weight. A drop of blood appeared on the boy's cheek. "You're sick," Jason's mother screamed, leaping from her seat. "He's unstable. He's attacking the children." Arthur wanted to say, "It was an accident." He wanted to say, "I'm sorry," but his brain short-circuited. He stood in the middle of the classroom, his head jerking left, right, like a broken metronome. A continuous, strangled hissing escaped his throat. He didn't look like a teacher. He looked like the monster they believed him to be. He locked eyes with Claire, who was standing in the doorway. There was horror in her eyes. Not for herself, for him. But that look of horror was the final straw. He ran out of the classroom. The following days blurred into a gray smear. The principal called him in. There was no yelling, no accusations. Just cold, bureaucratic politeness. "Mr. Vance, we understand your condition. But the parents, you understand. The petition, student safety." "I never," Arthur began, but a tick cut him off. "K-Ka, I never meant to cause harm. We suggest you resign for personal reasons. It will be better for your record. We won't mention the incident." He signed. His hand jumped, making his signature look like the EKG of a heart attack. He packed his things in the empty classroom. A poster of Einstein sticking his tongue out, a gift from a past graduating class, a stack of notebooks, an old textbook by Landau. The door creaked. It was Lily. She held a small, awkwardly wrapped package. "This is for you," she said. Arthur took the package. Inside was a tuning fork. "Why?" he asked hoarsely. "When I'm scared," the girl said, looking at the floor. "I hum the note it resonates with this tuning fork. And I know that if there is resonance, then something hears me. Even if it's just a piece of metal." Arthur gripped the cold steel. His shoulder jerked, but he didn't even notice. "Thank you, Lily. Keep studying physics. It won't betray you." As he walked out of the school, he saw Claire. She was standing by the entrance, talking to the young gym coach. She was laughing. She didn't notice him walk past. A stooped man with a box in his hands, whose head occasionally twitched strangely. 1 year passed. Arthur no longer taught. He worked at a massive fulfillment center for an online electronics retailer. The night shift. Minimal human contact. Just him, the boxes, and a scanner. Here, among the endless aisles of shelving, his ticks didn't scare anyone. The monotonous hum of the servers was soothing. One night, during his break, he was scrolling through his news feed. YouTube suggested a video. The title read, "Tick-Tock returns? Shocking truth." His heart clenched. He pressed play. It was footage from that lesson. The moment the glass flew. But then the video cut away. Lily appeared on the screen. She stood before the camera, looking older, more confident. "My name is Lily," she said. "I am currently a physics major at MIT. And I want to tell you about the best teacher I ever had. About a man who fought his own body every single second to give us knowledge. You laughed at him. But he was stronger than all of you combined. The video had over 1 million views. The comments were mixed, but amidst the filth, words of support broke through. Someone wrote that they also had Tourette's. Someone simply said, "Thank you." Arthur sat on the cold concrete of the warehouse floor. He pulled that same tuning fork from his pocket. He struck it against his knee. A pure, long note floated through the rows of motherboards and graphics cards. 440 hertz. The standard. His shoulder jerked. K-Ka. But this time, the sound didn't seem ugly to him. It was just a part of him. He remembered the lesson on resonance. He had lost his career. He had lost Claire, whom, perhaps, he never really had. He had lost his dignity in front of a crowd of teenagers. But somewhere out there, in a university lecture hall, sat a young woman who knew Newton's laws and understood what true strength was. Arthur stood up. The system was closed. But Entropy had not won. Because even in chaos, he had managed to transmit an impulse. He went back to work, and his stride was just a little steadier than usual.